There is a motion to accept the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, sounds like it passed unanimously. All those opposed? Okay. We are here for a public hearing on a major variance, number VAR 2022-01 for 3635 Fifth Street. Matt Kennedy is requesting to locate a
Please check the number.
location standards for detached accessory building structure. And so okay. Sorry. Okay, call to order. Okay. I'm trying to get to the 1 minute. Here it is. Sorry about that. I had to locate the script for the public hearing. Good evening. My name is Scott Sterling, and I'm the chair of the Hubbard Planning Commission. I will be presiding over this hearing. This is a time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of major variance file VAR 2022-01. Request for a variance to the location standard for a detached accessory structure in the R1 zone to replace an existing non-conforming garage. The hearing is now open and it is now 6:42 p.m. Land use, Oregon land use laws require several items to be read into the record at the beginning of each public hearing. The city planner will review this material. Your patience is appreciated as she goes through these statements. Holly, I'll send it to you.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. For the record, my name is Holly Byram and I work for the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. And these are the legal requirements. The applicable substantive criteria upon which this case will be decided are found in the Hubbard Development Code, section 2.101, which is the R1 low density residential district, section 3.104, variances, and section 3.110, non-conforming uses and structures. All testimony and evidence received during this public hearing must be directed toward these approval criteria or to such other rule, law, regulation, or policy which you believe to apply to this case. An issue which may be the basis for an appeal to the City Council or the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record at or following the final evidentiary hearing on this case. Such issues shall be with and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford this body and the parties to this hearing an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. This public hearing will proceed with a staff report and any other comments from governmental agencies that are in attendance, followed by the applicant and all of those who are in support of the application. All of those opposed to the application will then be allowed to speak, followed by those with general comments who are neither for nor against the application. Finally, the applicant will be entitled to a rebuttal period. Please state your name, physical address, and mailing address clearly for the record before your comments. Please try to avoid repetition if someone else has already expressed the same thoughts. It's perfectly all right to state that you agree with the statements of that previous speaker. Please ensure that everyone will have an opportunity to speak. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by this body, they must be formally placed in the record of this proceeding. To do that, either before or after you speak, please submit the material to Vicki Noggle, who will make sure your evidence is properly taken care of. Prior to the conclusion of the first hearing on a land use application, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, it will be up to this body to determine if the hearing will be continued to a time and date certain, or if the record will be kept open for the submission of additional evidence.
Thank you, Holly.
Mm-hmm.
With that out of the way, I need to ask the audience and fellow commissioners a few questions. Does any member of the audience have any objections to the notice that was published? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest or bias?
I have worked, this is Phil Cartall. I have worked for Matt, built a couple of houses for him, and he has worked for me, sold a couple of houses. So that might be something that, I don't know. I don't know if it's a conflict of interest or not, but I'd like to put that in the record.
Okay. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report any site visits or ex parte contacts? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the impartiality or ex parte disclosures of any of member of the Planning Commission? City Planner Holly Byram, please give your staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question for Commissioner Cartall. Do you expect to benefit financially from the construction of this garage?
No, not at all.
Thank you for.
If he builds it right, if he builds it right, I won't yell at him. That's the only thing that's going to happen. And I'm not building it. He is.
Thank you for confirming.
Yeah.
Okay. So the commission should have a staff report from me to confirm this is a major variance application. And the Planning Commission hasn't actually had many major variances. It is a type 2 application similar to a site development review, but it has different review criteria. And so this is a unique situation in which the owner, Matt Kennedy, has a home which is, what is it, more than 125 years old, and it has an old garage in the front of the property. And so he is requesting a major variance to the location of a replacement garage because the existing garage is in poor condition and he'd like to replace it. But your current code says that accessory structures have to be in the side yard or the rear yard, but this garage would be forward of the historic house. So it's a unique situation. I'm just going to run through the decision criteria quickly. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval with a couple of conditions of approval here. So the Planning Commission would have the final decision on this one. I'm just pulling up the report here. Would it be helpful if I share the screen to go through the report, or is that not necessary?
probably.
Would that be helpful? Okay, let me do that. I don't. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so on page 2 of the staff report, I have included a vicinity map. This is on 5th Street at the intersection with D. I've included a picture from the applicant of the existing historic home. And up front here, this is the garage that's in poor condition that he's proposing to replace. This is the site plan the applicant has provided. In the yellow is the footprint of the current garage, and then the red is essentially the enlarged footprint of the replacement garage. And you can also see the house structure there. There is an existing garage in the rear of the house as well, and that's accessed off of D Street. And then at the bottom of that page is a rendering of the front of the proposed structure. So this would be a 2-story structure. It would have a garage on the bottom and then storage space above. The first criteria that you need to consider comes from R1 zone, and that includes things like, first of all, is this an allowed use? Yes, you can have accessory structures. Does it meet the dimensional standards of the zone? Yes, it's proposed to meet the side and rear setback of 5 feet for accessory structures. There's a maximum structure height of 20 feet, which in this case, measure the structure height is an average of the highest gable. So in this case, that's in feet, so this is fine. The R1 zone has development standards for detached accessory structures, and they limit the size of the accessory structures, and this is an issue. There are 2 different standards written in the criteria here, and it's a little bit confusing. I consulted my team of planners at the Council of Governments because it's not a clearly written standard. It's a little bit apples and oranges here. So what the standard says is that the structure shall not exceed 1,400 square feet in size, or the area covered by the main building, whichever is less, or whichever one limits you first. So in this case, we interpret that to mean the total structure size, which is your gross floor area, is 1,400 square feet limit. And then the footprint would be the limit of the main house. So in this case, the existing garage is significantly smaller than the new structure. The new structure is proposed to be 1,120 square feet first story and 800 square feet second floor. So the total would be 1,928 square feet total. And so that exceeds the 1,400 square foot size limit. And so I've included a condition of approval that the applicant would reduce the overall size of the structure to meet that 1,400 square foot size limit. And then in terms of the footprint of the building, the home, the primary structure, its footprint is 1,676. And so that's not an issue here. The structure meets that limit. And then the next criteria here says that the detached accessory structure may be located within a rear or a side yard. But in this case, it's located in the front yard because it's forward of the front building line of the house. That historic house has a building setback of about 41 feet, which is really large compared to most of the other houses in the neighborhood. And then the new replacement garage would be at the existing building line, which is about 28 feet. And so that's the reason why Mr. Kennedy is applying for this variance. So that's about a 32% variance, making that a major variance instead of a minor variance. The next set of criteria are from the variance section of the code. There's a couple different ways someone can be approved for a variance. Either you go with one of these situations under section A. No, I'm sorry, this is for, I was thinking of the non-conforming use. So under the variance criteria here, the applicant has provided responses to each of the criteria. Staff generally agrees with some of the responses here. This is a unique lot. It's a unique situation. The setback is very large because of its historic nature. And so staff supports that this is an unusual circumstance here. And the next one is that you wouldn't be impacting other properties in the area. There is one other house that's close, the neighboring house is close to the property line. Those neighbors were noticed by mail of this public thing. They didn't provide any comments. Staff didn't hear any concern. The minimum setback is 5 feet. That's what is being proposed. I did make a note in here that if Mr. Kennedy plans to convert the second floor of the structure to an accessory dwelling in the future, an ADU, then technically this should have a 7.5 foot side setback. So I made a note in there, it's advisory. If that is the plan, then that's the side setback that's recommended. So this is the non-conforming use criteria here. It starts on page 7. So there's a couple different ways you could be approved for a non-conforming use. And then here there's a criteria about how the Planning Commission can approve this. The first one is that the alteration would result in a reduction of non-conformity. And in this case, the structure is proposed to be significantly larger, so it's difficult to argue that it's a reduction of non-conformity. However, the applicant is offering to move it back slightly from 28 foot setback to 28 feet 4 inches. So he's arguing that that would be a reduction in the nonconformity because he'd be increasing the setback there. The next criteria is that the alteration would have no greater adverse impact. Similar thing there. The structure would be bigger. However, the existing garage is in poor condition. The replacement structure would probably improve the overall appearance and function and safety of the structure. So there's an argument to be made there, overall positive impact on the neighborhood, I would think. The next criteria is about, has that non-conforming use been discontinued for a period of 1 year or more? The applicant states no, it's been in continuous use. And the question about the non-conforming use conforms to the requirements of this ordinance. And so there are recommended conditions of approval there. Overall, staff is recommending approval. The conditions of approval I've included here. Just to point out a few, the applicant is required to get building permits from Marion County for this structure. All utilities have to meet public work standards there for the frontage. The building size should be reduced to meet the accessory standards, and that would be 1,400 square feet or less, and that's gross floor area, so that includes both floors of the building. And the side setback, this is advisory. If there are plans for an ADU, that should be increased from 5 feet to 7.5 feet for a 2-story ADU. For that front setback, the applicant should go with the offer to increase that front setback from 28 feet to 28 feet 4 inches. Driveway should be paved. Clear vision area should be maintained. If the applicant converts it to an ADU in the future, there are standards for accessory dwelling units, and the change of occupancy permit will be required. And then variances are good for a period of 2 years. There are opportunities for a time extension if needed in the future. So at the of page 10, I've included a box around the recommended motion, which is for the Planning Commission to approve the major variance and adopt the recommended findings and conditions of approval contained in this staff report. Attached to the staff report in Exhibit A, I've included the comments that I received from departments and agencies, and that was no concerns from Public Works, City Engineer, or Police Department. police department did recommend sufficient lighting on site. And then Exhibit B is the application. So that concludes my staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have before accepting additional testimony.
Okay. Thank you, Holly.
Mhm.
Are there any questions of staff from the Planning Commission before we continue and accept public testimony?
I don't.
Okay. I will now accept public testimony regarding this case. Would the applicant or their representative like to speak?
Sure, I would. Thank you all for attending. I was going to complain about the Zoom meeting, but I guess it's saved me some money because I don't have to pay for Holly's drive time, so maybe I'm paying after all. So makes it easy. I agree with the recommendations with a few exceptions. Well, actually one exception, I think. Yeah, it'll have to be permitted, whatnot. The building size. I've talked to people in other jurisdictions, and Holly and I had a discussion about this. And I had a follow-up email. She did take the staff, and her staff's opinion makes a leap here that I think is very much out of character with the intention of the code. And I had some help in writing this code back in the day of my time on the Planning Commission and Council. And staff, if you look on line F in the recommendations for your conditions of approval tonight, it states toward the last line, to be less than 14 square hundred feet gross floor area. That is an interpretation that does not exist in the code. If you look into the code, it in development standards, and she has it in the packet here, detached accessory structures shall not exceed 1,400 square feet in size. It doesn't say of floor space, it says inside, or the area covered by the main building, whichever is less. This should say area to area, but it says size, and size is not defined in our code, and size does not say floor area in our code. So the purpose of an accessory structure, and the reason you have building height restrictions, it has to be junior or subordinate to the primary structure. So you don't want to have a building that is taller and bigger as the shop or than the house. So that's, you have this relationship between the two buildings, and the height is one and the footprint is one. So when it says 1,400 square feet in size, or the area covered by the main building, whichever is less, I truly believe to the intent, and I firmly believe that it is area to area. If you're going to use that interpretation, for one thing, I don't know at this point. My goal is to get the thing dried in by fall with the price of lumber and whatnot. So there are many attic truss situations like this. I showed one at Stubb Road in Woodburn or Jervis last week, where there's a monster shop with an apartment and all this kind of stuff in, and it has, I would walk upstairs into an unfinished attic, and they had I could have put a bowling alley up there. So it is a second bonus or unfinished. I mean, literally, the building was 60 or 80 feet long, attic trusses the whole way, open to the insulation. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it. My goal is to get it dried in. So I guess if I changed on it to attic, if I change the word, or unfinished bonus, that might take care of that. But also by that standard, if I eliminated that attic space, I could make the building I could make the building bigger. Same roof, I could extend it 10 more feet in the back, 28 by 10, and I can make it a more imposing or a larger building if I just put the roof, the 12 pitch roof up, and didn't fill in the attic space with anything. Then if I use that interpretation as a standard, I would be allowed to make the building bigger than I'm currently proposing. So I feel very, very, very confident about that. And if that floor space interpretation was to be used, the major floor space in this is garage. In residential applications, you don't count garage space as living space. So now you're adding it in, and then the house, you're taking it out. I mean, it just is it is not well defined in here. And I totally understand that there could be different interpretations. And I would suggest, as I often am, to find the problem in the code. Here comes Matt with a problem, but that in the future, that the Planning Commission looks at that and decides that. And if it's going to be the area of the house, then put 1,400 square feet area in the subordinate building as well, so that it is clear in the future. But I am very very convinced that it's comparing footprint to footprint. And that's my only, this garage is, my other garage acts as a shop and I don't get to park vehicles in it and things like that. And this, if I had to shrink all that down and start combining attic space and garage floor space, it's not a tenable project for me. So I would request that you approve it as recommended by staff with the adjustment that strike that as proposed in the line E, that interpretation of how it's written, gross floor area as interpreted by staff is not applicable in this case. So that's it. That's all I got.
So Matt, this is Phil. You are suggesting that it's 1,400 square feet is the total floor size, does not matter what's the upper level. Is that what you're basically saying?
That is absolutely my interpretation. So just to further clarify that, most of the space, all of the space on the second level or in the attic, essentially on this, is attic trusses. The roof pitch is 12-12 and the building's 28 feet wide. So you have, a lot of us can look at our attics and you have a little attic, a big attic, and depending on the roof pitch, you get a bunch of space up there. Well, if you frame it out right, you can walk around up there. So whatever's done up there, if I had 0 footage up there, I'm putting a 12-12 pitch to match the architecture of my 12-12 pitch on my house. So I'm trying to make it match that Victorian style. And there's all of this space up there, whether it's filled with insulation or, or no living space or full living space, any of that is irrelevant. The footprint of the building compared to the footprint area, as there's reference in the code, area of the house, is the relationship standard. And what's done in that attic or under that, your attic is your basically your space between your roof joist and your roof. Your ceiling joist, your ceiling joist and your roof. And what happens above that doesn't affect the impact on the neighbors, the structure. It doesn't affect anything. You're just using attic space in a different method than attic, or a different purpose than attic.
So give me a minute here. I want to read something here.
If I could, Phil, while you're looking that up, I would also mention that I've had 2 instances when I was on Planning Commission and Council, and I've actually referenced this issue exactly 2 times. And one was for about building or rebuilding on the spot, and that was when the Burger Hut was being rebuilt. And at that time, I was being questioned by the public as to how they could rebuild it. It didn't meet the standard type of thing, and they tore it all down and rebuilt it. And Mark Fancy was the planner at that time for Midland Valley Council of Governments. And I said, Mark, I'm getting some calls about this. What do I tell people? They're building this and it doesn't apply with not. He said, basically you're replacing it. You're using it. It's basically grandfathered in, for lack of a better word. It's location against the lot line and all these different things. It's there and it's being rebuilt there. So the 2 standards that matter in my case are the front standard of the setback and the side standard. And I'm basically could add on or leave, that's the 2 standards that I'm leaving in place. The rest of it's infilling toward my house and doesn't affect any of the code standards. The second time I did that, I looked at doing the same project back in 2008. And at that time, there was a male, I don't recall his name. He was at COG for a short period of time, maybe before Suzanne Duffner. And he looked this up for me. And I asked him specifically about this area coverage then. And he looked into it and got back to me and told me it was regarding footprint at that time. That was a different staff member, different interpretation. So unfortunately, it hasn't been clarified in that time. In 2008, 9, 10, my income changed a little bit being in real estate, and it was not a time to be building any kind of garage. So anyway, I didn't build it, but I did inquire with COG, Council of Governments, that time about this, and I was told it was footprint by that staff member.
Is there anyone that would like to speak in support of the application?
I'm reading what, you could look at it both ways, right? If it's 1,400 square foot for the building size, it doesn't say,
Commissioner, as a point of order, we should save deliberations for after testimony is complete.
okay, yeah.
Sorry about that.
I will read it as it is supposed to be, or it is a talking point in section E. I printed it out separately, but I think Holly has included it. So I'll just read the verbatim. Detached accessory structures shall not exceed 1,400 square feet in size or the area covered by the main building, whichever is less. So it says size in the accessory structure and area in the primary structures, not using the same verbiage.
Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition of this application? Is there anyone that would like to speak neither for nor against this application or neutral? Would the planning commission like the applicant to address any of the testimony? Before I close or continue the public hearing, are there any additional questions from the planning commission or staff or anyone? As a reminder, once I close the hearing, only commissioners or staff may speak. Okay, not hearing any. Public testimony is now over. I will close the public hearing at 7:12 p.m. I will now entertain discussions on the application and/or a motion.
This is Glenn Holum. I tend to agree with the applicant. I would probably offer a motion that we approve as presented. However, making the amendment to condition F that we approve as it was presented at the 1908 square footage. Or so the language is correct in that regard.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't allow it. I mean, it's just square footage up there that's, more is better, especially with Matt's habits, putting all kinds of garbage away all over the place. So I don't see why we wouldn't approve it. And I agree with Glenn. We should go back to the prior year. I second the motion.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second to accept the application with the applicant's square footage that was proposed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any. Passes unanimously. And do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved, Glenn Holum.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 We're
Thank you,
adjourned.
Commission. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Holly.
Again, I'd like to apologize for the delay.
No worries.
We'll take pizza or something sometime later you can make it up to us.
There
Okay,
you go.
I'll put that on the
Thanks.
tab.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.